Hey folks, Lucas Welsh here. Just fresh home from the Grand North American Fiddling Championships. And man, I gotta tell you, we've seen some phenomenal playing there. And it got me thinking a little bit about my old contest days. And I thought this might be a great time for like a top 5 things to think about when you're preparing for a fiddle contest. So stay tuned, we're gonna get into it. All right, so you're going to play in a contest. Now, there's a few reasons why I think every fiddle player should compete in fiddle contests. And it has nothing to do with money, okay? Money is the last thing you should be competing for, okay? Just the enjoyment, the chance to, put yourself up against some of the best competitors in your area, maybe your country, your province or state, depending. It's important. Just as I shoot this out here, I'm going to be talking about fiddle contests, but I'm only familiar with the Canadian type fiddle contests that we have. And I know down in the States, it's a little bit of a different ball game down there. They run things differently, so that's kind of first you want to make sure that you're knowing where you're competing and what some of those local rules are and things like that. So that's just something you should always be doing. But competition is just a great way to really see where you're at. I mean, I remember my first contest was in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. I thought I was pretty good. I mean, I was just a little guy, so we all think we're awesome, right? And, I took dead last place for sure. Was I disappointed? Yeah, for sure. I was disappointed. And at that age, I was probably disappointed that I didn't get my $25 or whatever it was for a placing. But it didn't take me long to realize that the contests were so much more than the prize money, even the contest itself. The opportunity to meet new people, learn new tunes, make friends. And, we have this whole musical family that's out there, and they're really great people. They're really great people. They're all doing the same things. They're playing the same tunes. I keep in touch with pretty much everybody that I ever competed with. It was just great. We learned so much from each other, jamming in the back rooms and playing. I mean, that's where I learned how to play fiddle, was at fiddle contests. We'd get to jam, we'd compete, and then we'd play for the dance. And we were usually playing with better players than we were. Okay, so if we couldn't keep up, well, we just worked that much harder, we made some mistakes, and we kept going. Now, I was judging the fiddle contest here this past weekend in Fort Saskatchewan, and we've seen some amazing competitors. We had 75 competitors, all ages, 6-year-old up to, I think there was some over 80-year-old competitors there. It was a wonderful contest. Great performances. There's great competitors. Everybody had a smile on their face the whole time. Okay? I don't think that, getting money was a thought on most of their minds. It was just a great time. But out of that, I came up with a little bit of a top 5 list of things that I think anybody that's entering into a fiddle contest should look at. So let's take a look at them. Number 1, and this was a little bit of an issue, actually. We had a situation. Number 1, tuning. Okay? Tune your fiddle. Is that enough? Well, I tuned my fiddle to a tuner. I know it's in tune. Well, that's great. Is the piano in the practice room in tune? Well, I don't know. Okay, well, now I tuned to the piano in the practice room because, all right, so, okay, I tuned to the piano in the practice room. Well, is that one in tune to the piano that's on stage? Well, I don't know. Did anybody check that? Kind of doubt it. Even electronic keyboards, they need to be calibrated. There's usually a way to calibrate an electronic keyboard. Sometimes it's a little knob on the back that's a pitch, or sometimes you have to, hold my pinky this way and stick my tongue out to the left as I hold 3 buttons in place with my elbows and my nose, and then it calibrates. Okay, we had a situation where they were using high quality keyboards in practice rooms that were in tune and calibrated themselves. The piano, which had been tuned recently, had slipped a little bit, and it had just settled into where it was. It was in tune with itself, but it wasn't quite up to pitch. And so we had a little bit of a situation where, not all the competitors were tuning to the piano that was on stage. Okay? Take your time. Make sure you're in tune. Okay? You're not really, until you start playing, you're not timed as per se. And that could be different per contest, I'm not sure. So look at the rules first. But take your time, make sure you're in tune with your accompanist. And if that's different from the practice room, it doesn't matter. It's up to you to make sure that you're in tune with the piano you're going to be playing with. All right? So that's rule number 1. And that's probably the most, one of the most critical things that can happen. Because it doesn't matter if you're playing in tune. Our only reference as judges is how the two sound together. And if something's not right, something's not right. And it's your responsibility to make sure you're in tune to the piano on stage. All right, number 2. You can play as super good as you possibly can. Clean, flawless playing. But if that playing has no feel and life and groove to it, then you're not quite finished with learning about it, especially old-time fiddle music. One of the biggest things that we judge on is danceability and timing and how it feels. Like, does this make me want to get up and dance? Can I polka to it? Can I waltz to it? Could I call a square dance to it? Those are the things that we're thinking about behind the judge's seat. And it's really important. And, I'll give you a little bit of a couple little things here, okay? So say I'm playing a waltz, or a jig, sorry, I'll use a jig. A jig is a great example. Okay? That's pretty stale. It's technically good. The notes are in tune. It all plays. But it's just got no life to it, like. Right away there's these little pushes and these accents on the beats and on certain beats, and it gives it a little bit of life and it gives it some feel. And that's what we want to hear. We want to feel that. Okay, so really important. And where are you going to learn that? You're going to learn that by playing with better players than yourself and by listening and by playing at dances. That's where you're going to learn that. And I realize that that's not easy to find today. I'm kind of at the end of the generation that got in on, there was still lots of contests and lots of dances to play at. And we got the opportunity to play with great dance players, great dance fiddle players, and learn these things and copy them. Okay? So whatever opportunities you get to play with somebody that's maybe more experienced or a good dance player, that's where you want to get in on. And you have to not fixate on necessarily looking for the cleanest playing fiddle player in the room, because that can be a little bit misleading. You can play super clean and super accurate and be wonderful and not be nailing the feel that you're going to get. Okay? So what I would suggest is to look at the older generation of fiddle players. And I'm not talking guys my age even. I'm talking about guys that are 20, 30 years older than me, from 2, 3 generations, a generation or more before I came along. Those are the guys that you want to be listening to and really paying attention to the feel, the groove, and the tempos and the timing that they have. Okay? Very important. Number 3, your tempos. Okay? Practicing your tempos is the start of where you find that dance feel and groove. If a song is too slow, you can't groove, you can't get into that pocket, we call it. There's a pocket. And that's just where everything just feels really good. Okay? And you can watch that. When you're playing for a dance, watch that dance floor. You pick out the couple that you think is doing the best dancing. And you watch them, you watch their feet. If it looks like they're like struggling, if they're looking around, rolling their eyes and stuff like that, chances are you're not doing something right. Okay? Pay attention, listen with your ears, watch with your eyes, and adjust. Be willing to adjust. So tempos, critical. If you're playing your waltzes too slow, they're not danceable. They're sluggish and they're slow. Yes, there are slow waltzes. Okay, and we understand that. We realize that as judges. And we accommodate for those types of things, but generally we're looking for a nice dance tempo. Jigs and reels, the same thing. If they're too slow, they're just we just want that extra few beats per minute to bump them up, and vice versa. If they're too fast, it's just it's a runaway. And so you really want to find that. If I was going to give some ideas out here, I would be recommending you play your waltzes around 138 beats per minute, and this is just my recommendations. Some players like them a little snappier, some players like them a little bit slower. So take these as a starting point, and kind of go from there. Waltzes in a 3/4 time, I'd be playing about 138 beats per minute, maybe even a little touch snappier, depending on the dance crew I'm playing for. Jigs and reels, I'd be sitting them in around 105 beats per minute. Now here's a little trick that I used when I was competing. I'd set my jig tempo, and when I was done my jig, I'd keep that foot tapping, and that was my reel tempo. I never changed it. Okay? So instead of if I started out the foot just stayed, the tempo stayed, and that was my real tempo. And that always served me really well. As long as if I felt that my jig got a little bit slow, I would bump my reel up to compensate. But if I felt I had a great pocket on that jig, that was right where I kept my pocket for the reel as well. Okay, so there's a little trick for you. Get that jig tempo nailed down. When you're done your jig, keep that foot tapping, and that's your tempo for your reel. And that'll give you a really good base guideline where to go. All right, number 4, practice with your accompanist. Okay, your accompanist, number 1, needs to know your keys, and they need to know, play with you so that they understand what the form is going to be. If you're playing each tune 2 times, 2.5 times, 1.5 times, whatever it is, you got to get that form down. If you're playing tunes that are a little bit abstract or have some weird chords in it, try and get a chord chart for your accompanist, okay, so that there's no guesswork. That's up to you. These are your things. Our accompanists that we have are top notch, but remember that they're playing for 70 people, 75 people at this contest. that all had 3 tunes, and the championship class had 4 tunes. So, I mean, you do the math. They had to play a few hundred tunes. All right? So, it's not up to them to learn new music on the fly. You need to be prepared for them, to give them the best opportunity to do the best job they can for you. So if you're playing something that's got some obscure chords, or is a little bit out, or an original piece, make sure that you have those chords figured out for your accompanist ahead of time. And then have the roadmap figured out. How long you're going to play each tune. And if you've got intros and endings, make sure those things are all figured out. And it never hurts to just have charts for everything you're going to do. And then if the accompanist says, I got it, great. And if the accompanist says, I don't have it, okay. We had a situation where we just about didn't have the house accompanist that was hired for this event because of a major glitch from Microsoft. And so their flight just about didn't make it. And so we had alternative accompanists lined up, and you got to make sure you have your T's crossed and your I's dotted. And the last thing that I would suggest is to have your set timed out. Okay? Most contests have a time limit that you can't exceed with your tunes, whether it's 3, 4, 5 minutes. It depends. And if they want you to play 3 tunes or 4 tunes, they usually give you extra time for a 4th tune. So you want to make sure, we did have a couple bells rang over the weekend there where somebody had went over time, and it's fine to finish your song. It's just you're not judged past that time limit. So if you have a really deadly ending for your last song and that falls beyond the time limit, you're not going to gain any extra points that you may have otherwise. And, so you're not going to lose any points either. But, if you had this really flashy, beautiful ending, you had a chance for maybe a couple extra points from the judges. Maybe that was enough to put you ahead a little bit or not. So always time your sets. Make sure you look over your rules from your contest before you get there. Make sure if there's any tunes that are not allowed for you to play. Sometimes there are. Make sure you're not playing those. Make sure you're staying within kind of the guidelines. And with these 5 tips, I think that, you could be really super well prepared for a fiddle contest. And, you got to know a little bit as well what your local contests are doing. I probably wouldn't play the same tunes here if I was competing on the East Coast. Maybe I'd be doing a little bit different tune selection by region, So there's a lot of things to think about. And again, for our American friends, and their contests are quite a bit different than ours, and sometimes they can have 2 or 3 accompanists, and there's different things, different rules apply. So just make sure you're looking ahead, figuring out the rules. Tune your fiddle to whatever instrument is going to be on stage with you, piano or guitar. Groove and feel are super important. Just as important as how well you play. Number 3, practice your tempos. Make sure that everything is lined up. Run your jig and your reel. Keep that foot going. You're going to be in the ballpark. Number 4, practice with your accompanist. Make sure you have chord charts ready for them, and make sure they know the form and how everything is going to go. And number 5, make sure that you time your set out according to whatever rules your contest has, and life should be good. So I hope that helps some of you. Some of you that haven't competed before and maybe don't, there's not that many contests left. So this is just a little bit of tips and tricks from when I was competing, and I hope you folks enjoy. And if you like what you see, hit the subscribe button, smash the bell, whatever you got to do, and we'll be seeing you again very soon. Cheers.